It's only day number 4, but already the first summit finish of the Vuelta, so an early selection could be created today on the general classification. Career Vuelta stage win also paid tribute to his former teammate Xavi Tondo, who died 3 months ago today, ironically enough, in Sierra Nevada, just a few feet away from where the actual finish of today's stage will be. And as a result, he won the stage, took all the jerseys, the race lead, a clean sweep of all the jerseys that they have at this year's Vuelta.
He's going to look like a mummy by the end of all that.
He had a lot of fittings yesterday on the podium. It was the red jersey that gave him the overall lead, and here are the big name contenders and how they line up behind him. Vincenzo Nibali, the only rider within 2 minutes. Rodriguez, Anton Brajkovic pretty much holding serve over the last few days. Big loser, though, on stage 3, Denis Menchov, now over 4 minutes back. So it's now on to stage number 4 as we reach the southernmost point of this year's Vuelta. 170-kilometer stage and 2 different climbs, both in excess of 20 kilometers long.
It's 106 miles in length, another hot day. They started out with a massive climb. They finished with even a bigger climb. It has 4,300 feet of vertical on the way to almost 7,000 feet in elevation.
Highest point in this year's race coming on stage number 4. This was earlier today. Pablo Lastras helping to kick things off in the start town of Bassa. Under sunny skies and again warm temperatures, as it should climb into the mid-90s as the day rolls along. Movistar, the team of the overall race leader Pablo Lastras, leading them off the line. This was earlier today. Big crowds as the Spanish summer holidays continue here in late August. So the riders rolled out earlier, and as we continue, we'll pick them up live on the road to the first summit finish at Sierra Nevada, and that's coming up right after this. Sprinter Mark Cavendish has had trouble each and every day of the Vuelta so far. He is currently in the 3rd group on the road. He has been dropped on this 4th day of racing. You'll remember he lost time in the initial team time trial. He suffered in the heat the last few days, was dropped yesterday on some of those late climbs, and now here he is off the back again today. As we are now live with the breakaway, a 7-man group, and they have a lead of almost 7.5 minutes right now. We'll run through the names for you. Guillaume Bonifant of AG2R is up here. Matthew Boucher, the 26-year-old American, in his Grand Tour debut, the reigning U.S. National Road Champion, has made the break for Radio Shack. Johan Bagot of Cofidis, Thomas Rohriger of the Leopard Trek team, Cone de Court of Skill Shimano, and Jose Toribio of Andalucia. There's Pablo Lastras in the red jersey, surrounded by his Movistar teammates at the front of the field.
Movistar does not want to see that breakaway get away like Lastras's breakaway got away yesterday from the Leopard Trek team. So they're doing riding on the front. Big gap for that group, but there's still a lot of climbing left to bring them back.
Pablo Lastras at 35 years of age. One of the most poignant moments in his entire career yesterday, to pick up his 3rd Vuelta career stage win after the first 2 came way back in 2002. The first time he ever rode the Vuelta and hadn't won a race in 3 years. So he finally bounces back, gets a stage win, gets the race lead as a result, and is able to dedicate the win to Xavi Tondo, his fallen teammate who died 3 months ago. We saw a glimpse of David Moncoutier a moment ago for the Cofidis team, a guy who won on this stage up to Sierra Nevada last time the climb was used back in 2009. Number 44 sitting near the back right now.
That red jersey of Cofidis, David Moncoutier. He has won the King of the Mountains classification the last 3 years running in this great race. He's trying to make it 4 years in a row. He'd be the only man ever to win it 4 times. But today, I do not see this race panning out in his favor because the general classification battle is too tight. This stage coming so early in the race, it's going to be a day for the big GC hitters to duke it out.
And some of the climbers, like Joaquim Rodriguez, aren't necessarily targeting a stage like this because that final climb, even though it's long, is not necessarily steep. So some of the punchy, explosive climbers aren't going to be able to gain a lot of separation. But if you want to battle for the GC at this race, you have to stay near the front on that final climb, no doubt about it.
I'm completely with you on that. Interestingly enough, guys like Brad Wiggins, he says, well, this is the perfect type of climb for him. It's not so steep, and he really wants to give it a go here today and see how good his legs are.
We'll have to see, because Wiggins earlier was in a second group on the road. There was a split in the peloton earlier. Wiggins was caught in the second group. Those two groups have come back together to form one large main field, and so Wiggins is okay for the moment. As we're back up to the breakaway, Koen de Kort, the 28-year-old for Skill Shimano, is the rider leading the way in his first Vuelta. There's AG2R's Guillaume Bonifant riding in his second Vuelta a Espana, the 24-year-old, still searching for his first professional victory. And 7 minutes, 20 seconds back to the field. Their largest lead was 8 minutes earlier in the stage. So still hanging on to a good chunk of their margin right now, with Movistar leading the chase. And here's our Road ID stage profile. They've gone over the first Cat 1 that was very early in the stage. The red line shows you where the breakaway is right now. They are headed towards the Cat 3 that will summit with 45 kilometers left to go, and then a quick descent before that long final drag of over 20 kilometers up to Sierra Nevada, highest point in this year's race, that'll finish off just inside of 7,000 feet in elevation today.
When you see that, saw that profile, it explains a lot about why the field did split early in the race today. It's because right out of the start gate, they had that 20-kilometer climb, really brutal. It's not just that it's hard to do that, but 4 days in, the legs are already starting to feel a little bit heavy. It's hard to really be firing straight off the start line.
Coutier, number 44 again for Cofidis, just hanging near the back today.
It's his typical position. He rides right at the back. He doesn't like to fight for position. He just sort of lingers back there, and then when he decides it's time to do something, he'll move up and go on the attack. Sorensen, Saxo Bank Sun Guard. Special national champions jersey there. Oh, and some squeaking brakes and a little bit of bumping shoulders.
Here's Tyler Farah for Garmin Cervelo, who we just caught a glimpse of. Just missed out in the sprint to Chris Sutton a couple of days ago. And now here is the sprint for the KOM at the top of the Cat 3. And it's going to be Skill Shimano's Koen de Kort, who's going to go over first, just ahead of Rohriger for Leopard Trek.
And Rohriger deciding to put the pedal down over the top. De Kort responding, so maybe these guys getting a little bit frisky here with a long way to go in the bike race. Rohriger, the Austrian on that Leopard Trek powerhouse team. He's a good climber. I actually spoke with his director just about an hour ago, Lars Michelson, in the team car. And I said, look, you guys had the top 4 places yesterday going into the stage. Why didn't you just put everything into the chase? And he said, well, we gambled. We did a little bit of chasing, and we thought other teams might help us bring it back. Well, they lost the gamble, apparently.
A perfect illustration how those stages can go either way. It could have ended in a field sprint if they had worked more at the front of the field, but those climbs were just late enough that it allowed the break to attack. It allowed Lastras to get away, and because of the lack of organization behind him, both in the peloton and in his fellow breakaway companions who he attacked, he was able to stay away and go in solo for the win.
It all comes down to those motivations, and you know, quite honestly, Jakob Fuglsang, before the day started today, he's the man who could have put himself into the race lead yesterday had the Leopard Trek kept things together. He says he feels great and he thinks today's a good climb for him, but I think they missed a huge opportunity yesterday. When you've got the top 4 guys in GC, you have to commit your team 100% to ride for them, because Fuglsang's not going to win this race overall. If you got the jersey, keep the jersey as long as you can.
Oh, it's Rohriger and de Kort, the 2 riders from the 7-man breakaway, going over the top of the Cat 3 climb first and getting some daylight on the descent, leaving Jose Toribio, Johan Bagot, Mathieu Boucher, and Guillaume Bonifant behind. And now, oh, here comes the Katusha rider.
That's Vorganov, and making some sort of gestures there. Boucher coming through for Radio Shack, Bonifant, and
he was not happy. Whatever the gesture was, it was not one of being very cordial.
Yeah, it didn't look like it.
So the breakaway back together, 7-man group, and this is the peloton behind. Just as they come up to just over 4,000 feet in elevation here, Rabobank bringing several riders to the front. So is Katusha. And one of the Katusha riders is making a little bid to come to the front.
Kind of strange to see. Oh, it's because he's grabbing a bottle here and just trying to get out of trouble, it looks like. I was going to say, you got a man in the breakaway. What exactly are you thinking? But still seeing all the Rabobank guys on the front, also a little bit interesting, and that may just be because of the feed zone. Stay out of trouble and also make it easier for your soigneurs to see you in the peloton.
They've been at the front each of the last few days at various times. So they've not been hiding. And now down under 6 minutes to the 7-man breakaway as the field comes up to the top of the Cat 3.
To me, more understandable for them the last couple of days on the front because Breschel's been riding so well and he's been in the top 10 both days. But today, I mean, really, why not let Movistar chase the break down? If you got a guy with good legs, capitalize on that team's effort.
Not a lot of flat road out there in the distance. They're going to go downhill and then hit some rolling terrain before the long final climb of over 23 kilometers that will finish off the stage up to Sierra Nevada. And everybody back together in the 7-man breakaway after DeCourt and Rohriger had attacked a little bit over the crest of that Cat 3 climb.
Apparently Vorganov, man, second from the last, the Katusha rider. Whatever conversation he had with them got him back united once again.
Peloton on the descent, and look at this. Mark Cavendish.
Whoa, out of the race.
So Cavendish has just pulled out. We saw him struggling early today. We saw him get dropped yesterday. He lost time in the team time trial. So these first 4 days have just been terrible for the HTC High Road sprinter, but I don't know if anybody could have anticipated him pulling out here on only day 4.
No, I mean, obviously today is going to be a really tough day for the sprinters, and they have to wait until stage 6 to even, actually stage 7 to even have an opportunity for a true field sprint. So a couple more days of suffering for him, but still, you would have thought he would have been in there. I wonder if he's sick.
Very unusual because even in that first sprint opportunity, he was riding for one of his teammates to try and put him in the red jersey of overall leader. So on what could have been a sprint stage, he wasn't even the guy they were riding for. So a very bizarre first few days for Cavendish. And well, for that HTC High Road team, of course, they're disbanding at the end of the year. They've lost Cavendish from this race. Matt Goss pulled out a few days ago, so they've lost arguably their 2 top sprinters here in the first 4 days of their final Grand Tour.
And as of the start of today, Goss was the only guy who was out of the race. Now Cavendish is out. Really rough. Cavendish, you know, to his credit, 5 stage wins at the Tour de France. He's thinking about the World Championships, and if he's feeling off and he's really struggling in Spain, sometimes you got to know when to pull the plug and regather your strength and your motivation and sort of figure out what you can get out of the rest of the season. For him, it would be a World Championship rainbow jersey.
So that leaves us with 196 riders left in the race, and most of the Rabobank men are now at the front of the field. And the gap continuing to come down, 5:43 with 37.5K for the leaders. In a race like this where you have a lot of heat, you have climbs early, makes it a tough decision. How long do you stick around? And what's the ideal preparation? How much time at the Vuelta versus rest in training that you could otherwise be taking part in?
I mean, it's got to be more than just it's a hard stage race for Cavendish to be out. He's either suffering from like heat stroke or heat effects, because a lot of guys are, or he's sick. Something's going on with him.
Now to the breakaway. Guillaume Bonifant, the AG2R rider, coming up to the front, and now Rohriger for Leopard Trek rotates through to the head of this group.
Rohriger's a solid climber, the Austrian man, virtual lead of the race.
Now Cavendish, not the only rider who suffered the last few days, and not just the sprinters, but some of the GC guys have also suffered in surprising fashion. Andreas Kloden, the co-GC leader for Radio Shack, is already over 14 minutes back. Dennis Menchov, one of the top contenders and a 2-time Vuelta winner, Lost about 1:20 to his GC rivals yesterday alone. He's over 4 minutes out of the red jersey now.
Menchov says he still feels good. He had a mechanical problem right at the wrong time yesterday. But definitely, it does not look good for Menchov. Guys like him, if you start out bad like that, it can only spell bad things very often.
Vincenzo Nibali, the defending champion, however, talking about how good he feels and that he's really found a nice racing rhythm as he looks to become the first Italian to ever win back-to-back Vuelta titles. He would also be the first man to win back-to-back Vuelta titles from any nation since Roberto Haras back in 2004. Rabobank still rolling along at the front of the field. Now down to 5.5 minutes to our 7-man group up front.
I continue to be puzzled by all the work Rabobank's doing on the front of the field, Steve. And their leader, he's a good man in the mountains, Carlos Barreto, a Spaniard on that Dutch team. But really, to line up the whole team on the front this early in a 3-week race, it's just hard to understand why they're doing that.
Rabobank has everybody up there right now. They haven't stretched out single file on the descent of the Category 3 climb. Our 7 leaders just about a dozen kilometers away from starting that final climb of the day, Sierra Nevada, on another sunny hot one in southern Spain. 5 minutes. That's 3 minutes off its one-time high of 8 minutes. And just about 33K left to go for the leaders here on stage 4.
And the poor sprinter, Oscar Freire, who's been battling, feeling pretty bad, a little bit sick. I'm sure he's loving this as his team makes the race even harder on this mountainous day. Well, they're not doing it for him.
You know, it's something we talked about a few days ago, how when you come to the Vuelta, you have a different combination of riders than you would normally see at a Grand Tour. So you have teams less experienced at riding at the front and controlling the race, and sometimes they ride at what would seemingly be odd times and for bizarre reasons. And we saw Leopard Trek riding at the front of the field yesterday. When you thought they'd work to bring the break back, they kind of sat up and they messed up the chase as a result. And now Rabobank at the front today with everybody at a time when you wouldn't necessarily expect them to be riding at the head of the main field either.
Yeah, I wouldn't at all. I mean, Barreto is 143 down. He's with that big group of contenders. It's about 25 guys that are all at 143 down behind Lostras. Lostras is a great rider, but he's not expected to contend for the overall classification. He will certainly do everything he can to hold on to that leader's jersey as long as possible, but he's not going to win this thing overall.
The Dutch team not just stretching their legs. You put everybody up there. You have some sort of strategy in mind.
Yeah, if Steven Kruijswijk hadn't lost time yesterday, he's now at 3:06 down. I would actually think that they might even be trying something with him after his great performances in the Giro d'Italia. But he's another one of the guys who came unraveled in yesterday's stage.
Some of these other teams may be caught by surprise, but this works out well for them. The teams you might expect to be at the front of the field can just sit back for a while and just take a ride.
And it's so incredibly interesting how you have a guy like a race like today with 2 massive mountains, and the field is bigger right now than it was in yesterday's stage with no major climbs. Yesterday was up and down all day, and it just slowly unwound the peloton. And today, there's all this area in between the climbs where they can sit in and follow the tempo of the team on the front.
Lead down now to 4:47 as our 7-man group at the head of the race comes up on the final 30 kilometers. Plus, it is slightly cooler. Temperature right around 93 degrees in the valleys today, but still pretty hot.
Yeah, but you know what? You'll take it. Every degree counts when you're out there totally exposed on your bike like that. If you're Team Movistar right now, you are happy to see Rabobank all over the front, saving your men for later. Pablo Lostras hoping that he can hold on to that jersey today. I don't think he's going to be challenged by Sylvain Chavanel, who's the man that's the closest in the general classification to him at 22 seconds, because Chavanel said he finished yesterday really shot. But the question is, will guys like Nibali and Wiggins and some of those other guys hit the final climb hard enough to gain back almost 2 minutes on Lostris?
Well, it'll be the highest point of this year's race, also the southernmost point of this year's Vuelta, the Sierra Nevada, one of the iconic climbs that they use at the Tour of Spain. First used back in 1979, most recently in 2009 when David Moncoutier won the stage. Big difference today, though, from 09. The Sierra Nevada summit finish was in stage 13 2 years ago, but today it comes on stage number 4.
It does make a massive difference because right now the classification is closer together. And so if you let this group stay away, well, a guy like Thomas Rohriger can ride into the overall lead if he gets a 3-minute, 18-second advantage. If this were a week and a half from now, none of these guys might even be within half an hour or 20 minutes of the lead, so you can let them go.
So just about 5K away from the start of that long final climb. 23.5K, not necessarily steep, but it could create some movement of the GC pieces here on day number 4.
Well, Europe does not have the super high altitude roads like the guys are encountering right now in Colorado, the big race, the USA Pro Cycling Challenge. So, you know, the altitude does play a factor in the bike racers' physiology. You can't recover as well, you can't sleep as well, you actually get more dehydrated. It makes it tough.
Now consider that the summit finish today at the Vuelta a Espana is the highest point in this year's race. The start of stage 1 of the USA Pro Cycling Challenge today in Colorado is 300 feet higher than the summit finish today, and that's just the stage start.
Yeah. That's why when I was racing, we always loved it when the Europeans came over to the US to race with us on our turf.
Going through the second intermediate sprint point of the day, no big challenge from the riders in the breakaway, and now that puts them on the lower slopes of this final climb to Sierra Nevada.
Well, because they've gone through 2 King of the Mountain sprints so far. The first one was a Category 1, the second one was a Category 3. Cône de Court won both of those, so he is the King of the Mountains leader on the road at this time.
Again, this climb, long but not really steep, averaging 5.7%. The maximum of 10% comes at 10K into the climb, which is just over 13 kilometers from the finish. And then once you get towards the top, it really gets much easier. The last 2K or so really levels off. They have a 5% kicker just inside the final kilometer to the finish, but once you get towards the top of the climb, it really eases up to a very gentle gradient.
Wow. Look at Rabobank on the front, just drilling it. Notice the hands, they're hanging off the front of the bars. That's to simulate that aerodynamic time trial handlebar position. Basically, it closes down the pocket just a little bit in the front of the body, so you have less frontal area. Makes you more.
Crouchback has shown he can climb. You would think that Rabobank, though, would look to other teams who would be more likely to be controlling things at the front, because under typical circumstances like this, they wouldn't have too much trouble finding other teams who have a stake in today's stage.
Completely agree. It's Movistar's job to keep things tight. Oh, Bagot looks like he's coming off the back of the break.
This is the first-year pro, the 23-year-old from Cofidis. It seems like the first of the 7 riders in the breakaway to lose contact on this last climb.
His first Grand Tour. It's always a harsh wake-up when you get into these Grand Tours.
Now, Cône de Court of Skill Shimano. Looks like he's having trouble along with Jose Toribio of Andalusia. Some gaps between them and the other 4 riders up the road at the front.
How quickly it all changes from the breakaway, everybody able to roll through when it's flatter, because you have the benefit of the draft on the flat roads. But when you hit the climbs, it's much more about your power to weight. Sure, there's a little bit of drafting involved, but it's not nearly as beneficial to ride the wheel.
So it's Guillaume Bonifant of AG2R at the front, followed by Thomas Rohriger of Leopard Trek. And it's Rohriger now on the move here on the climb. Launching an attack. Boucher, number 202, tries to respond for Radio Shack. Bonifant is on the wheel of Rohriger. And at the back there, Edward Vorganov of Katusha.
Matthew Boucher just finished winning the U.S. Pro National Championship, narrowly out-sprinting George Hincapie just in May. And he's got a very slightly modified Radio Shack jersey to show that he's the U.S. National Champion.
There's a couple of stars on the jersey. Boucher in his first Grand Tour, one of 4 Americans in the Vuelta field this year.
Rabobank men at the back now really feeling all the work they did.
153 is Oscar Freire and Juan Manuel Garate, 154.
Also back there is Paul Martins, 156. He was one of the guys tied for the King of the Mountains lead, but that'll be over today. Took part as well. All kinds of guys have been shed out the back of the peloton, including this entire group here. Fabian Cancellara up there on the left, the white plus on his back, 102. 4-time world time trial champion, as well as the Olympic time trial champion.
Daniela Bonatti, former race leader, her in the red jersey.
He lost that yesterday to Pablo Lastras.
Cancellara in the heat the last few days saying that his legs felt like a cheese fondue. They were melting out on the road.
You know, when you're a big guy, it's actually typically even worse for you on these hot days because you have more mass.
These guys back here just hoping to stay together and ride into the finish. A lot of guys concerned about just making the time cut today because of the way they suffered in the heat the last few days. And already the first summit finish coming up on stage 4, so there are time cut concerns way down the road.
And a lot of those guys were caught behind that split very early in the race, so they already had a really tough chase.
Sergei Lagutin of Uzbekistan of Vakon Soleil has that special white jersey.
Because he's the national road champion of his nation.
There's Nibali for Liquid Gas on the left-hand side of your screen.
Vladimir Karpets there for Katusha, the Russian. And and look at this. It looks like Boucher in a little bit. Oh, this is Cloden. This is back behind the field. Another day for Cloden.
Cloden comes into the day over 14 minutes down on GC. Now, remember, he had that back injury at the Tour de France, and even though he came in to the Vuelta as a co-leader on GC, he admitted he was not at 100%. He was just hoping to ride into form, maybe get a top 10, but it's been a struggle for him these first few days.
He was.
All the top GC guys in this pack right here. Pretty small group, though. A lot have been shed out the back in terms of other riders, some of the sprinters and domestiques. Anton, number 51 again, sitting right there at the back. Last year was leading this race, had a comfortable grip on the red jersey. When he crashed, had a bloodied elbow, took him out of the race. And now coming back to try and win the Vuelta this year. He's the odds maker's favorite. Went to the Giro to get some Grand Tour racing in his legs this year. He won on the iconic Zoncolan climb. Part of back-to-back stage wins for Euskaltel as Mikel Nieve also won. $15K now left to go for the leaders. Rohriger at the front, then followed by Vorganov, Bonifant, and Boucher.
And let's not forget that Pablo Lastras, yesterday's stage winner and red jersey overall leader, has been dropped from the field behind this group. So once again, another day of changing the overall lead. The question is, who's it going to be today?
Now it's still Anza and Pagordi here at the front of this group with all of the GC riders. Rabobank was doing a lot of work earlier. They've since pulled off the front. None of the
Vicente Toribio from the break. That is what you call cracking. Did everything he could to stay with the leaders, and when he blew, he really blew.
Picked up a win at the Volta of Portugal just last month, riding in his second Vuelta and hitting that proverbial brick wall.
That's the risk you take when you go in the breakaway.
This is now back live. Igor Anton at the back of this GC group.
It's not what you want to be seeing for the leader of the Basque team. Matthias Frank there, the BMC rider, but Anton, several of his lieutenants around him. Now he looks fine. I don't know, it's always a little bit sketchy when you see the leader riding at the back of the group like that.
Matthias Frank there of BMC alongside. Sometimes with certain guys, and you have a opening to a Grand Tour like we've had with the heat and some of the unpredictable stages, it takes a little while to find that racing rhythm. Even though you come in as one of the favorites, you need to ride into it a little bit more. Yeah. Perhaps that's what's going on with Anton.
That's exactly what he's saying. He said, look, there's a lot of racing yet to come. Sure, I suffered a little bit yesterday on the final climb, but there's a lot of racing to happen here.
Okay, 12 kilometers left to go for a four-man breakaway. Their lead just about a minute and a half over the peloton. Edward Vorganov at the front. Guillaume Bonifant now rotating through. Thomas Rohriger and the American Matthew Boucher.
Going through that little flat, actually slightly downhill section of the course now. They get that little bit of relief. But still, basically 14 miles without much relief is what these guys are in the middle of right now.
Looks like the red jersey of Pablo Lastras is over 5 minutes down right now.
Their team, I actually got in contact with them earlier today before they hit this climb, and they were hoping that Lastras would be able to hold the jersey today. They were hoping that this climb wouldn't be aggressive enough to shed him, but I think he's paying for his efforts yesterday more than anything.
10K for the four leaders. And while it may be cooler as they go up this climb, still with no cloud cover, it's been another hot one with temperatures up towards the mid-90s. It's still very warm out there on the slopes of the Sierra Nevada as we have a rider for Saxo Bank here off the front of the GC group, it looks like.
Well, and for the most part, except for this little downhill section here, when you're going slow on a climb, you don't get that evaporative cooling with the wind blowing through, so it is much hotter anyways when you're climbing. Rafael Majka there, the Polish rider, has gone on the attack for Saxo Bank Sundgaard.
One of two Polish riders on the Saxo Bank team. Saxo Bank, of course, the team of Alberto Contador, who has elected to bypass his home Grand Tour this year.
And they're actually riding in the service of Chris Sorensen, the Danish rider on this Danish team. So let's see if they have a little thought here that maybe Sorensen's going to try and jump up.
So he's 119 behind our four leaders. And just a few seconds ahead of the main field.
Honestly, a very smartly timed attack by Majka, because the main GC men all looking at each other here in this group. No major attacks. Majka's fresh. He might be able to ride up there to the breakaway group and possibly snag a stage win if things go his way.
And this is back to the four leaders with Guillaume Bonifant, followed by Thomas Rohriger, Matthew Boucher, and Edward Vorganov as they hit the 9K to go banner.
You're out there in the break like this, it just feels like such an eternity. You know that the gap is coming down, but you keep hoping. that it's not going to come down all the way. Look at Anza on the front of the peloton. This man has been up here for several kilometers.
And the other GC team's just sitting back right now, as Anton continues at the back of that group. Interesting day at the front of the peloton. We haven't seen any of the GC teams come forward because Rabobank was doing so much work earlier. Now the two Vacan Soleil riders are up there. So on the first day of the big mountains with our initial summit finish on a day that could create somewhat of a selection in the GC, none of the general classification teams have had to work at the front of the group.
You never know how it's going to play out and who's going to set that tempo. Certainly having Rabobank on the front of the field leading into the climb was a big help for all the general classification men. But they were riding for their man Kruijswijk after his wheel problem yesterday that took him out of the race right before the final climb.
So the lead for the four-man breakaway, 1:17 with 9 kilometers left to go for the first summit finish on a sunny day on the Sierra Nevada. There the entire climb, and in case you're wondering, he's riding for the red jersey, coming into the day 4th on the general classification at 1:24 back. But Pablo Lastras has lost time. He's going to lose the red jersey. Vincenzo Nibali on the left-hand side of your screen is also up there for Liquigas, but Pagordny has a chance to take over the race lead if he hangs near the front here. So that's why he stayed near the front, has had a teammate with him, and Anton at the back losing contact, even though he has 2 teammates trying to help pull him up.
In big trouble here, and he's been struggling all the way up this climb, sitting at the back. Same thing, he had the trouble yesterday yo-yoing off the back. He made it back on, but today there's so much more to climb. This could spell the end of his real legitimate chances to be a contender in this race. Chris Sorensen,
the leader for Saxo Bank. Nibali responds.
Nibali's there. Kruijswijk is there for Rabobank, but look at Nibali right on by. See you later, boys.
Now Vincenzo Nibali, defending Vuelta champion, has said he's been feeling good these last few days when others have been suffering. Our 4-man breakaway inside of 7K to go to the finish.
Wow, nothing for so long, and look at this. The shark from the straight shows his hand early.
This is a good climb for Nibali. He's not one of those explosive climbers like a Joaquin Rodriguez, so he may lose some time on some of the short, steep uphill finishes later in the race. So a climb like this where he can grind away could be good for him. Others responding, though, and he's not getting much leash.
Yeah, he can see that he's not going anywhere. It looks like he's going to sit up. Kruijswijk's pulled off the front, but it's coming back together with 7K to go. Only 34-second advantage for the leaders.
Jan Bakelants of Omega Pharma Milano was at the back of that group. All right, This is how close they are. Chris Anker Sorensen and Robert Kieserlowski just about onto the back wheels of our 4-man breakaway, with the 5K banner in the distance on Sierra Nevada.
This is all very tight on the road. Let's see if anybody from the breakaway can match the tempo being set right now by Sorensen. Sorensen has had Grand Tour stage wins before, and they've been on summit finishes.
Now for Astana, Kieserlowski's skinned back. He's lost some time. He's not the highest placed rider among the Astana team in the general classification coming into the stage, but certainly one of their top GC riders overall.
And Kieserlowski comes in 328 down, and Chris Anker Sorensen comes down in 346 down, so they both get a little bit of leash. You know what? On a day like this, take advantage of any leash they give you.
Chris Anker Sorensen has rolled right through now to the front of the race as we're down to the final 5 kilometers on a long day. 170 kilometers altogether, 3 big climbs. This last one, the first summit finish of the race. And it's Bonafont of AG2R on the wheel of Chris Anker Sorensen.
That's a nice move by a man from the breakaway. The other guys all really feeling all the effort they put out in the road already today, but Bonafont somehow managing to do it, but he is struggling.
Riders into Astana.
A lot of guys looking for opportunities right now because they see just a little bit of hesitancy from that GC group.
Daniel Moreno is the rider here, number 85, moving to the front.
Moreno, a very good climber, and he's going to launch himself now.
So Moreno trying to ride away and get up to the front two.
And that was Kieserlowski back there for Astana, trying yet again, but this time being dropped by Moreno. Moreno comes in 220 down in the general classification.
So there's our two leaders right now. Up ahead, Chris Anker Sorensen, Guillaume Bonifant, Daniel Moreno now trying to bridge across and make it a group of three at the front of the stage. Kieserlowski behind, some remnants of the breakaway, and then GC group with Liquigas leading the way. Last we saw, Igor Anton was struggling. Dropped from the GC group. Moreno about to catch him. So it will be a trio up front on the Sierra Nevada.
Well, I think Sorensen can use a little help, and it really Bonifant is not able to contribute to this escape effort. So this would probably be good news for the potential success of the breakaway to get Moreno up there.
Chris Anker Sorensen and Daniel Moreno have the fresh pair of legs. Bonifant has been in the breakaway all day. He's the only man left from what was a 7-man break at one point. So it's now Sorensen and also Moreno dropping Bonifant. So he just can't hang any longer. So once again, a group of two with 3K now left to go.
And I'm not talking later in the race today. I'm talking 2 weeks from now.
Coming up close to 7,000 feet, the highest point in this year's race, the Sierra Nevada. The mountain that offers the highest point in continental Spain at over 14,000 feet, but the finish of today's race considerably lower. Still, a lot of altitude and a long climb to finish off this fourth stage of the Vuelta. Over 23 kilometers of climbing here at the end, and now we're down to just Chris Anker Sorensen and Daniel Moreno at the front, seconds ahead of this group, with Brad Wiggins sitting in second wheel. Michele Scarponi right now, 5 wheels back for Lampre.
Yeah, Wiggins does look just fine right now, just on top of the gear. And back to the front here, I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of Daniel Moreno pulling after Chris Anker Sorensen attacked him a minute ago and dropped him. 1K to go. Once you start attacking your breakaway mate like that, you don't get much help.
Another little 5% rise in the road coming up here shortly. But the steepest part of the climb is in the rearview mirror. Small GC field now coming through at 15 seconds back.
It's all so incredibly close here, and everything really flattening out over the top into the big ring. This really sets up Moreno very well with Chris Anker just pulling him like this. Moreno sitting on, saving energy, especially this flat part of the course. And Sorensen has really nobody to blame but himself because he attacked Moreno, so now Moreno's not going to help.
Chris Anker Sorensen having to do all the work at the front. The Dane will turn 27 years of age before the end of this Vuelta. And a top 10 at Liège-Bastogne-Liège earlier this season on the King of the Mountains at the Tour de Romandie, and now trying to hold off Daniel Moreno for the stage win.
And Moreno, this would be the biggest win of his career, and it's in a perfect spot.
He waited, moves past, and now it's going to be easier than maybe he even thought. Daniel Moreno is going to leave Chris Anker Sorensen well behind. He is going to win the first summit finish of this year's Vuelta. Daniel Moreno takes stage 4.
He even had time to zip up for the sponsor. First Grand Tour stage victory, by far the biggest win of his career, and he made it look easy.
And the GC group comes in just seconds back. But among the GC contenders for the race, Igor Anton still has to come across. At last check, he was 45 seconds back of this group. So can he minimize the damage?
And it really played out largely the way it looked like it was going to halfway up, where none of the GC men were really going to battle on the climb and try and gain time. It was more a question of who would lose time. This looks like Chavanel possibly there. No, that's Lampre.
Still waiting for Igor Anton. Well, over a minute since our winner Daniel Moreno crossed the finish line. And the top GC contenders were just a few seconds back. After almost 5 hours on the bike, 3 climbs.
That's the 2009 winner right there, David Moncoutier. So not a repeat for him today. And this is Anton with the lieutenant.
Wow, this is going to be a big loss for Igor Anton. Number 51 there has a teammate with him, but some considered him to be the outright favorite for this year's Vuelta, building his entire season around his home Grand Tour. And he crosses over a minute 36 back of the stage winner. Big time loss today for him. And right at the end, Daniel Moreno moving right around Chris Anker Sorensen and pulling away to his first Grand Tour stage win. After Chris Anker Sorensen did the majority of the pulling, Moreno, the fresher of the two at the finish. It really levels off at the end, so easy for him to breeze on by and collect the victory.
Moreno taking the biggest win of his career. His big goal in life is to win the World Championships. That will not happen this year because it's dead flat, but he won a massive mountain finish at the Vuelta.
Fourth different leader in as many days. Sylvain Chavanel now has the red jersey, leads by 43 seconds, and some of the other names lined up behind him include Vincenzo Nibali, who was within 1 minute of the top spot on the standings. And now for Todd Gagulski, I'm Steve Schlanger. Daniel Moreno, first ever Grand Tour stage win. We now say so long, and we'll see you tomorrow for stage 5 at the Vuelta. After a 23% uphill finish yesterday on stage 5, should feel like a day off with only a 14% climb in the final 20K today in stage number 6 at the Vuelta a Espana. Starting in the town of Ubeda, hosting the Vuelta for the first time in its history, and then heading just about due west. It should be another hot one, temperature in the mid-90s. As the riders will see the finish line one time before the finish of the stage, and then they have that climb late that's going to perhaps shake things up.
Very late, very long day, 120 miles, another hot one. So the length more than anything, and then that little climb at the end, 9 kilometers in length with a 14% max.
General classification among the genuine contenders, Joaquim Rodriguez sits just 23 seconds back of the overall leader, Sylvain Chavanel, after his win yesterday. Vincenzo Nibali has consistently been up there. Brad Wiggins holding steady a little over a minute back, and Dennis Minchov trying to chip his way back into the picture. He's now 2.5 minutes off the pace. And we pick up the action live on stage number 6. This is a 4-man breakaway that is just inside of 48 kilometers left to go to the finish. Their lead right around 4.5 minutes, and that skilled Shimano rider is Yukihiro Doi, the 27-year-old and first ever Japanese rider to take part in the Vuelta a Espana.
It's definitely an historic moment, and here he finds himself in the breakaway off the front with over 4.5 minutes advantage on the peloton.
No general classification threats among the 4-man breakaway, and this is the field chasing behind. Pretty good pace being maintained back there as you take a look at the road ID stage profile. Redline the leaders, and on that flat road leading to the category 2 late in the stage right now.
And that climb starts out pretty minimal. It's only 4 to 5%, but 6 to 7K in, it kicks up about 14% for a short period there. And so really a lot of question marks as to how much it's going to blow up the peloton and who's going to be left for the sprint.
Fabian Cancellara leading the way at the head of the peloton for Leopard Trek, as they would love to get their sprinter Daniela Bonatti in position for a stage win today.
See if Bonatti can have the legs to maintain contact. Certainly Cancellara there doing a big turn on the front. And remember, his teammate Bonatti did spend a day in the overall lead of the bike race, but lost it on one of the climbs earlier in the race.
Leopard Trek won the team time trial on day 1. Jakob Fuglsang, the Dane, wore the overall leader's red jersey before passing it over to his teammate Daniela Bonatti. Now Back to the four-man breakaway. In addition to Yukihiro Doi, the Japanese rider for Skill Shimano, we have Alexei Sermotins, the Latvian rider for Cofidis up here, Adrian Palomares, a 35-year-old for Andalusia, and BMC's Martin Kohler, the 26-year-old riding in his first ever Vuelta a Espana. Their largest lead was 8 minutes at one point. It's been just about cut in half with 45K left to go. So that's where we stand on, once again, another sunny, hot day. The weather has dominated the picture in the first 5 days, and once again, we're in the 90s for Stage 6 of the Vuelta here on Universal Sports. We bring you back to the tail end of the main field, trailing a four-man breakaway by 3 minutes 22 seconds with just inside of 44 kilometers left to go on stage number. BMC has Martin Kohler in the break, but they have lost a man behind in the field as Johan Schoop has abandoned the race. That brings us down to 191 riders left because we had an abandon earlier today, as it was Matty Breschel, the Danish rider, who crashed in the neutral zone with Luis Leon Sanchez. Breschel really banged up. He's pulled out of the race, and that really compromises his chances for the upcoming World Championships in his home country.
And Breschel actually apparently probably getting stitches in his chin. He has a bunch of road rash, and he was also getting x-rays on his chest, ribs, and hands. So pretty banged up in that crash.
And Kurt Arvidsson, the Norwegian who we saw in a nasty crash yesterday, has also pulled out. He had a crash with a child. We saw his bike broken in half. It looked very scary at the time. He was banged up but continued in the race yesterday, but apparently just cannot go on.
Yeah, Karsten Kroon actually after the race yesterday was tweeting about that crash, and he said it was the worst he had ever seen, going 70K per hour. That's about 44 miles an hour. He was on the wheel of him when he ran into a child. He narrowly escaped. He thought they were both going to be dead. He was in shock. He started crying, actually, Steve. And then he thought, well, now what? The race stops or what? And incredibly, both Kurt and the kid are more or less okay, but Kurt unable to continue racing today.
The child was fine, believe it or not. It looked like a terrible crash at the time, so it's been a very eventful last 24 hours, and we've seen some abandons today. The Matty Breschel one, no doubt the most bizarre, crashing in the neutral zone and requiring stitches to his chin, x-rays to his arms, chest, his ribs. And oddly enough, he was just named earlier today as the outright leader of the Danish team at the World Championships in Copenhagen. So, boy, oh boy, tough luck.
Yeah. And meanwhile, back in the bike race here, the breakaway group of four has just lost over a minute and a half with Fabian Cancellara just banging out a fierce tempo on the front of the peloton. It's gone from 4.5 down to under 3 in just a few short minutes.
There's some wind out there. You can see the trees blowing around. Some of these guys dealing with a headwind at the moment, as it's Sermotins, the Latvian for Cofidis, who's at the front. Kohler sitting second wheel. Japanese rider Yukihiro Doi back there, along with Adrian Palomares, the two riders at the back of the four-man group. It's been a very...
It's not for a lack of trying. He focused his entire season on the bike race, won a stage, a very challenging uphill summit finish at the Giro d'Italia in May, up the Monte Zoncolan. And he said, I'm just coming to Italy to make sure that I'm kind of on track. He was. He came into the Vuelta thinking that he could win this thing overall, but has conceded he just couldn't put it together and doesn't have what it takes.
Palomares here on a stage at the Tour of Britain back in 2009, his most notable accomplishment. As the gap back to this main field is now down under 2 minutes with 37 kilometers left to go for the leaders on this very open and exposed road. That's why they're getting a lot of wind today, but the temperature is still very warm. Well north of 90 degrees. And we saw at the front of the main field a moment ago a lot of Garmin-Cervelo riders up there, and you might think on a stage that could wind up in a field sprint, you would naturally think that they would be riding for Tyler Farah, but that's not the case today, as Heinrich Hausler is their primary man.
Yeah, I actually spoke with their director just about an hour ago, Bingen Fernandez, and I asked him who their hitter was for the day, because they had a bunch of guys on the front. He said it's all about Hausler today, but the climb is going to be tricky, starting out at 4 to 5% and then pitching up to 14. So he's not sure that Hausler is going to be able to make it on that climb in contention. But that's what they're shooting for.
It's one of those finishes where you have dissension among riders and directors. Some are saying that the climb is far enough away from the finish line that it's going to come back together for a larger field sprint. Others say it's steep enough and close enough to the line that a reduced number of riders are going to survive to the finish. So it's one of those where you just don't know, and it really comes down to how the riders approach the finish, how they tackle that climb.
Yeah, for me, it's either way. It's going to, my pick is Peter Sagan, because he climbs pretty darn well for a sprinter, and I think if there's a bit of a selection on the climb, he'll make it. And even if there's not much of a selection on the climb, I still think he's going to be the fastest guy left come the finish line.
That's Chris Sutton. He won the other day just in front of Vicente Arenas of Omega Pharma on the first open road stage of this year's race. First ever Grand Tour win for the Aussie Sutton. Break had a lead of 8 minutes at one point, now down to 1 minute 40 seconds and continuing to fall.
I always hate seeing cones in the course like that. Very dangerous.
Road ID stage profile, red line the leaders. They'll go through the intermediate sprint and then almost immediately start the Cat 2 climb that'll be 9K long. And the sprint is on for the points and time at that intermediate sprint section.
Looks like Kohler's going big for that intermediate sprint. So even though he was covered in minerals on his jersey, he's still got some punch in those legs.
Well, Kohler pulling away from the other three in the breakaway as the lead continues to come back down. Just after the sprint, they quickly get onto the slopes of this climb that will summit with just over 20 kilometers left to go on the stage. As the field now comes through, Leopard Trek has been leading for most of the time that we've been on the air at the front of that peloton.
Kohler's in his second Vuelta. He's also a Swiss national time trial champion.
In even 1 minute.
Kohler actually wore the Mountains jersey for 2 days at the Giro d'Italia, so he's kind of a breakaway specialist type of rider. He often sniffs these out.
Adrian Palomares of Andalusia coming through next. There is the finish line when the racers come through for the second time, 31 kilometers from this point. So Kohler goes through first, Palomares second in the second intermediate sprint of the day.
Let's see if Kohler decides to sit up and wait for Palomares or continuing on by himself. One rider separated out by the median. Just a little bit ago, we saw those orange cones in the middle of the road, which is a real nightmare for the bike racers. Those cones often get kicked up into the peloton and cause massive crashes.
Now the riders getting a look at what the finish will look like at the end of the stage. That sets up for a sprint finish if enough riders survive over that climb later on. As the big group comes through here, 1 minute back of our breakaway with just over 30 kilometers left to go. And from here, we'll do a counterclockwise loop around Cordoba in the shape of a triangle before coming back to finish the stage. Cancellara now sitting second wheel as Garmin Cervelo is helping in the chase out front. This is the very front of the bike race. Martin Kohler attacking at that intermediate sprint point. Kohler going clear of Palomares, Sarah Motines, and Yukihiro Doi, who he's been in the signature breakaway with all day long.
30K to go, a very long way to try and make this on his own. But hey, maybe he's inspired by his Swiss National Time Trial Championship he won in June, and so he's decided, what the heck, it's the first time I'm a national champion. Let me lay it all on the line today.
Martin Kohler The last man standing in the breakaway, he is caught, and this is now the front of the bike race led by Leopard Trek as they're apparently riding for their sprinter Daniela Bonatti.
Stuart O'Grady on the front there. And it's funny that Fernandez mentioned to you that he thought the climb was too hard for Hausler, because like an hour and a half ago I talked with him and he said they were riding for Hausler. So how quickly it changes, I guess, Hoodie. But the question also is, I know there's a lot of wind at the finish line, and how much do you think that is going to play into maybe breaking up the field over the top of the climb and keeping it apart?
Yeah, I think most of the wind is kind of gusting down here in the valley here, and Cordoba, it's very hot as well, 38 degrees Celsius here at the finish line. When they go up this climb, they kind of be up hills above Cordoba. There's about 3 or 4 different climbs that come up and around these hills. We've seen different routes over the years with riders kind of attacking on these climbs and holding off and winning a stage. I think Miller did it a few years ago, and there's been some other riders. So if it does come down to a group, the factor, but I think it'll be a pretty small group if riders don't get away.
What do you think about the GC battle that's unfolded so far here now 6 days in? Joaquim Rodriguez getting the stage win yesterday, but with his suspect time trialing abilities, it still seems like it's going to be a long shot for him to win the Vuelta.
Yeah, I think everyone's kind of looking already to Salamanca and that big 47K TT. I was talking to Brakovic and Wiggins both this morning, and they're both very optimistic about that stage, thinking they can take 3-4 minutes out of guys like Rodriguez and some of the other Spanish climbers who might still have some ambitions for the GC. So it's going to be a Vuelta that's going to be kind of turned upside down, I think, after that stage 10 in Salamanca, and it's going to be who has the climbing legs to try to attack those guys. Having Antown out of the picture really on the GC kind of changes things a little bit. So Belvier is a guy who's interesting too. He's kind of right there. He's got some good climbing legs as well as he can TT. So I think that Salamanca is going to be really going to see obviously the big selection there, and then it's going to be just a drag race to Madrid with a lot of these big climbs between the last half of this Vuelta.
Well, have you had a chance to catch up at all with the defending champion Vincenzo Nibali? He sits in 5th right now, just 33 seconds back, and he's the highest place of the GC men who actually can time trial pretty well. Right behind Fuglsang, but I think Fuglsang's going to lose a little time in the climbs. And what have you heard from Nibali lately?
Yeah, I mean the Leaky Gas camp, they're quite very optimistic right now because Nibali has been saying he actually feels even better. He was saying yesterday he actually feels better in this year's Vuelta than he did last year, and of course he won last year. So that's kind of Nibali, it's all stacked up for Nibali to win because he has a very strong team. As you guys know, he can climb as well. Probably climb better than guys like say Menshoff or the Wiggins. So Nibali, I think, is really the kind of guy who seems to be kind of the man to beat right now.
All right, Hoodie, we appreciate the time. You taking your daily ice bath over there?
Yeah, I'm trying to stay in the shade as much as possible because it is hot.
All right, Andrew, we'll catch up to you as the race goes on. Thanks very much.
Great, thanks, guys.
Well, Steve, 38 degrees, as he said, that's 100 degrees yet again. And when these guys are climbing at that temperature, it feels like you are literally in an oven.
And once again, Igor Anton closer to the back than he is the front on a climb.
Anton at this point just needs to survive for several more days and then hope that he can somehow get some legs and go for a stage win. Meanwhile, on the front of the field, Stuart O'Grady. Talk about a great domestique. O'Grady, a former winner of Paris-Roubaix, and yet you see him on the front so much doing these massive turns for his team leader.
And then the red jersey of Sylvain Chavanel of Quick-Step. Not only riding to keep that red jersey for another day, but Quick-Step also riding for Tom Bonin, who hopes to figure in a sprint today because Cordoba, today's finishing town, is where Bonin won his first ever Vuelta stage 3 years ago. So he has some fond memories and would like to get on the board here today in stage 6.
This pace looks a little hot to me for Tom Bonin to make it over in contention, but hey, he's made it before, and he'll certainly do whatever he can to get up there. Stuart O'Grady all the way to the back of the field in that amount of time after he swings off the front, doing that massive work. He doesn't care if he loses time now. He already did his job.
Sylvain Chavanel in the red jersey just behind all the Leopard Trek riders. He's the first guy to successfully defend the overall lead from one day to the next here in the first week of the Vuelta.
And they're certainly flying up it, have not hit the steep part yet that everybody was so concerned about and wondering if it would actually blow apart the field.
Now Leopard Trek doing a lot of work on the climb. It was just a few days ago in the stage won by Pablo Lastras where Leopard Trek did not work when you expected them to be doing a lot of the pacemaking at the front of the field. They gambled, they lost.
They lost big time. I mean, they had the top 4 guys in the general classification, and they let that 4-man break go. It stayed away, and it moved their men down to 5th and 6th. And all the breakaway guys moved up to 1st through 4th.
Live and learn at these Grand Tours. They're doing the work right now on the climb. As this is the back of the field, under 24K left. This climb will summit with officially 20.7 kilometers left to go on the stage.
There on the left side of the screen in the white jersey for Sky, the British national road champion. You can see Kruijswijk on the right with his arm in his back pocket, grabbing some food, and I thought he was going to eat it, but he just threw it out. In the orange jersey, great young rider on Rabobank, one of their leaders.
There's a power bar. Another guy struggling. Slow slog up a Cat 2 late on a hot day.
Coutier, look at that, the familiar face. He tried yesterday late in the race, and let's see if he can do it again today. Yesterday he couldn't.
He was caught inside the final kilometer, as once again he is looking for his 4th consecutive King of the Mountains crown at the Vuelta a Espana. It would be a record. Yesterday was the first significant move he made on an uphill climb, and well, today he's going for more points towards the summit of the Cat 2.
Yesterday he moved himself into 8th in that classification, but he's still a long way down on the points behind Daniel Moreno. Moreno, incidentally, leads 3 classifications. He leads the mountains, he leads the sprint, and he leads the combination, but he can only wear 1 jersey at a time.
Coutier targeting not only the King of the Mountains classification, but also wanting at least 1 stage win from this Vuelta that figures to be his last.
He's been very successful in that formula over the last few years. Sometimes it takes several attempts to get that stage win, but Moncoutier, he continues to try. He looks for just the right moment when the general classification guys are looking at each other, and he thinks, you know what? They're not going to go flat out today because of the way the course plays out, and it may be a chance for me to slip away a little bit really noticed and unchased.
Starting to get some time here as he pushes the pace out front. 4-man breakaway has been swallowed up. It's just Moncoutier now. Moncoutier out front by himself, and he is within 1 kilometer from the summit of the Cat 2. 21K left to go to the finish. HTC High Road has a man launching.
That's Martin going on the attack. There's a man who's got some wicked time trial legs, and we haven't really seen him shining yet in the bike race so far.
So he will now bridge across to David Moncoutier. Tony Martin, as they approach the summit of the climb, with Moncoutier up ahead, now has a target and clearly a goal in mind here at the end of stage number 6.
Tony Martin will be one of the hot favorites for the stage 10 time trial along with Fabian Cancellara. But Cancellara seems to be having much better form so far in the race.
Moncoutier and Martin go over the crest of the climb, but only just seconds ahead of some other riders who are now attacking from the field. So 2 other riders making a move. Things getting a little crazy and chaotic over the summit of the only categorized climb of the day, and now just over 20K left in the stage. Downhill and flat the rest of the way, still 18 kilometers left to go on the stage. Well over 4 hours on the bike, and just a 10-second gap for these 4 riders over that field.
And I'm only seeing 3 riders all of a sudden, so, oh, there's 4, okay. just missed one there. I thought, uh-oh, I hope we didn't lose one on the descent. But once again, it is the mountain man extraordinaire, this time leading him on the descent. And he's not really known for his descending skills, but he's pretty good when he's motoring.
And the field single file as they fly along here. So a big group came over the top of that climb together. And given that it's only 10 seconds to a front group of 4, looking more and more like we're going to have a bigger sprint finish than what some were thinking. Now 15 seconds. But a very motivated Leopard Trek team. And some of the sprinters behind them, everybody riding pretty quickly here. With some technical corners on the descent, but they seem pretty intent on not letting that break get too far away. Bringing it back together for a larger field sprint at the finish.
And it's not downhill all the way. Seal Dreyer's taking a big turn right now. There's some ups and down bumps here before they really hit the major part of the descent. Tony Martin now coming through for HTC High Road, the German. And, you know, it bears noting again that HTC High Road has won almost 500 races in their last handful of seasons the team has been in existence. And unfortunately, they are disbanding. All their riders and staff are going their separate ways. Luckily, there's such a bunch of good riders and staff that they're probably all going to find jobs.
Geox man at the front looking for some help.
These guys giving it pretty hard here. Moncoutier now coming through. Every one of them taking a nice hard turn on the front. They see the potential of holding off the field to the line.
What do you think about that potential? 15 seconds right now, still a long way to go.
I agree. I think the potential is mighty slim, but you're not going to make it if you don't try. Look at Tony Martin, not just coming through, but really attacking through. And they need to make sure they keep working together, because if they attack each other, it's going to start to slow down their overall pace. They'll go really fast, and then they'll sit up and look at each other.
Very interesting to note that Kevin Seal Dreyers is up there working really hard, and it's his teammate that's back with the field, Sylvain Chavanel, who has the red jersey of overall race leader. And Seal Dreyers only 53 seconds behind Chavanel on the general classification.
It's a great opportunity for Quick-Step to put a little bit of heat on other guys, because now Chavanel has a teammate up the road who's dangerous. And so once again, a great option to help your teammate out by sending somebody up the road. Survival mode for him right now, and so many of his teammates have tried to help him in that survival. Now Movistar going on the attack, but doesn't look like he's going to get away. Liquid Gas right there at the front. Looks like Sylvain Chavanel right behind him in the red overall race leader's jersey.
Movistar already has one stage win with Pablo Lastras. That was a solo move. And Lastras once again is the man on the attack. And while he's by himself now, he's trying to make it across to a 4-man group that's out front. It was Lastras a few days ago attacking the breakaway that he was a part of over the summit of the final climb, and then made it in solo to the stage win. His third ever Vuelta stage victory, and Lastras once again trying his hand here in the final dozen kilometers.
Lastras win a couple of days ago was absolutely phenomenal, as he rode into leading every single classification of the bike race along with his stage win.
Tony Martin now pushing it forward. Such a great time trialist, so he has that motor to get it up to 65 kilometers per hour. And the descent not overly technical, and with no rain, not as difficult as it may normally be coming off a climb. But their gap has come down to just 10 seconds now, so it's been cut in half.
Very motivated group of 4 men off the front, but the peloton has 2 entire teams that are highly motivated. Liquid Gas Cannondale on the front right now, and we've also seen a lot of Leopard Trek. I just saw a Leopard rider going very wide in the corner and thought he might be going off the road, but he stayed on.
It's like Lastras was swept back up by that group as well at the front of the field. Closing into the final 10K. They're flying at the back, flying at the front. As our four-man group desperately tries to stay away to fight it out amongst themselves for the stage win, but all the sprinters very hungry for what is one of the few real chances for a field sprint at this year's Vuelta. This is perhaps one of the least friendly grand tours for the sprinters that we've seen in quite a while.
These race promoters often now looking for things to really make these stages unpredictable. And look at these guys as they lean it over one way and then the other, and they actually counter steer into these corners just that little bit. They actually, when they're turning right, they push the right side of their handlebar out, and what it does is it moves their bike left and drops their body in, and then they just rail right on through.
Looks like Nibali is among the three Liquigas riders there at the front. Sylvain Chavanel responding, the red jersey just behind Liquigas, with 10 kilometers left to go. Of course, Nibali has never seen a descent that he doesn't like.
Chavanel also very well known for his descending skills.
10K left to go to the finish in Cordoba. Some slight gaps forming. The pace is so high at the front. And this is at the very front. Now Kevin Sealdreers of Quick Step setting the blistering pace. Moncoutier sitting on his wheel as it's still right around 60 kilometers per hour. Well, they're holding him off for the moment, but the field is really coming quickly behind him. Now 9 kilometers left to go, and it's just seconds, 5 to be specific.
Sealdreers doing everything he can there with Tony Martin, David Moncoutier, and Martin's had probably the best season of his career so far this year, winning the overall by virtue of winning the individual time trial earlier this year at Paris-Nice, the second largest stage race in France.
Remember, they've already seen the run into the finish one time. That was at the second intermediate sprint with just over 30 kilometers left to go, so they know what they're in for coming up here. It becomes totally flat just inside of 3 kilometers left to go to the finish. There's a right-hand turn just before 1K left, and then almost a 90-degree left-hand turn inside the final 500 meters. So that's what's coming up here shortly for these riders who are moving along at a very sprightly pace as they come off the only climb of the day. Now Moncoutier leading the way for the front four, but it looks like they're just about to be caught.
Got riders trickling up to him. 8 kilometers to go. That's under 5 miles. The motorcycle right next to him with a photographer there as well. And that bike trying to get out of the way.
So a group of 6 here at the front. 7th just hanging off the back. 8, 9, 10, 11 in the picture.
The bigger that group gets, the more likely some guys won't want to work, and the gap will just get shut down by guys in the field.
And Moncoutier, still the man at the front for Cofidis. Looks back to see who he's going to get some help from, and here comes Liquigas. Had 3 Liquigas riders up there earlier. Looks like just 2 at the front now. Kevin Sealdreers is right now 3rd wheel for Quick Step. 7K left.
The kilometers fly by when they're descending like this, but it is going to flatten out the closer they get to the finish. So it's not going to be high speed like this all the way to the line. Liquigas with a very talented sprinter, Peter Sagan, the Slovakian, who's had numerous wins this year. He's really been good.
Getting as aerodynamic as possible. Well, Liquigas really making a move here with half a dozen K now left to go.
Over 50 miles an hour for these guys as they fly down the mountain. And now things are going to straighten out and flatten out a bit.
That's the 5K to go banner. And see how straight, open, and exposed the road gets here. Some wind is blowing. And look at the gap starting to form here. So it looks like we have multiple Liquigas riders, a Movistar man up there in the front 5. See what the gap is behind.
All kinds of chaos right now, and also some crosswinds here. You can see the winds coming out of the riders' right, so there's an echelon here. That's Nibali on the front right now. Nibali has made the split, it looks like to me.
Using his tremendous descending skills, and remember, there are time bonuses at the finish. 20, 12, and 8 seconds for the first 3. Nibali perhaps trying to make a play to get a little bit of a gap, a time bonus.
Yeah, Sagan is in there. That's third wheel. That's Sagan going through your screen right now. 4 Liquigas men. Unbelievable. That's Kopecky right there. So they really have it stacked.
And they're down to 4K. So 4 Liquigas, 1 Movistar. Front 5.
This is a massive moment for Liquigas. 4 guys out of 5, including their general classification hitter.
Here's the red jersey back here, Sylvain Chavanel. That's Igor Antone.
These
crosswinds, a dangerous move.
These crosswinds really give this breakaway group an opportunity because all these guys back in the field are struggling in the gutter. It's much harder for them to close the gap.
Still a chance to bring it back together, because it'll flatten out a little bit more once they go inside of 3K left. But you have Nibali there. You also have Pablo Lastras from Movistar. Nibali, number 1, trying to defend that Vuelta title from last year and become the first Italian to ever win back-to-back Vueltas. Says he's feeling extremely good this first week when everybody else seems to be suffering. Impressive assault of that descent by Liquigas to get 4 men off the front. Now the red jersey sitting at the back here, Sylvain Chavanel. So this is certainly a dangerous move ahead of him. Nibali sitting 33 seconds back of Chavanel on the general classification coming in. He's got 3 teammates with him up front with time bonuses at the finish line here.
And this changes everything in the bike race. Nibali now looking for red, even though they were going to try and set up Sagan for the stage win.
Still could be Sagan, considering others are just seconds behind. If it does come back together, Sagan certainly has the better sprint. Here's Chavanel, Tony Martin, and that's Joaquim Rodriguez in the white jersey, number 81. He's wearing the white jersey because he leads the combined classification, so an interesting combination of riders just behind here. Yesterday's stage winner for Katusha, and it looks like just behind, Michele Scarpone was rolling through, and here's back to the 5 leaders.
Goes to show just how much you can never let your guard down. The climb didn't split it up, but the descent did, and the crosswinds may keep it apart with the way that front group of 5 is driving it.
Nibali, inside of 2 kilometers left to go. Peter Sagan just in front of Nibali. Pablo Lastras sitting amidst the 4 Liquigas riders here. But just seconds back to the chasing riders that include Martin, Chavanel, also Joaquim Rodriguez. They realize this has become a general classification battle, unexpectedly so at the end of stage 6.
Big time battle, and I cannot remember the last time I saw 4 Liquigas guys in a break with 1 other guy from another team. I mean, this is a truly phenomenal display of how they opened it up on the descent.
There's the red kite. That's 1 kilometer left to go.
Oh, they're coming apart a little bit now. Sagan opens the gap.
Now Nibali is just in front of Sagan.
Yeah, they're going to make Lastras close it down. Sagan looks like he's shot, but Nibali going ahead.
Wow, on a day where you thought maybe it would be a small group or a field sprint, it's become a GC battle here in the final kilometer with a flat run-in on stage number 6. Liquigas with strength in numbers up front. Now Sagan sitting at the back. Lastras for Movistar right in the middle of the Liquigas sandwich. Nibali at the front. He's drilling it. He wants to get that red jersey.
And the 4th Liquigas rider, 2nd from the back. That's Valerio Agnoli, one of the climbing hitters on that squad.
Now Nibali sitting 2nd wheel, his teammate leading him out, but Pablo Lastras is there in the middle.
Here comes Nibali hitting hard.
And now the sprint for the finish. Vincenzo Nibali trying to lead it out, trying to get the maximum bonus time in the stage win. 20 seconds to the stage winner here. And it's going to be Sagan who gets it. Peter Sagan, who outsprints Pablo Lastras and his Liquigas teammates. The young 21-year-old in his first Grand Tour gets his first Grand Tour stage win.
Liquigas absolutely phenomenal, opening things up. Sagan getting the big stage win, and Nibali moving way up in the overall.
Other GC riders coming across, but there are gaps at the finish line on a surprising day at the Vuelta. There's Sagan, number 7, stage winner. But what a show of force by this Liquigas team. Stage win and a boost in the GC for Vincenzo Nibali. The post-race report presented by SRAM is coming up next. Top 7, Chavanel hangs on to his lead by 15 seconds over Daniel Moreno. Vincenzo Nibali moves up, basically slicing his deficit in half. He's only 16 seconds out. Rodriguez and Fulsang round out the top 5. Everybody within half a minute of the red jersey 6 days in. The outright leader, but Nibali has pulled up into second place. Joaquim Rodriguez just outside of 20 seconds back. Michele Scarpone, he's within 1 minute. And everybody else just about holding their spots from yesterday, with Denis Menchov at the bottom of that screen, just inside of 3 minutes back. Peter Sagan had to take a few pulls, but he still was able to have enough strength to pull off his first ever Grand Tour stage win at the age of 21 today in Cordoba.
Unbelievable bike racer he is. And not only can he sprint, but he can climb pretty darn well too, especially for a sprinter. He's won stage races already. He is just an incredibly talented bike racer.
It's the first Friday at the Vuelta a Espana as week 1 of the Spanish Grand Tour comes to an end with a bumpy stage 7 on tap for today. 3 kilometers, starting in an old mining town just about 2 hours south of Madrid, but for the first time heading due north on a stage at the Vuelta through central Spain to Talavera de la Reina.
And though there are no rated climbs on the course today, there are a lot of ups and downs, and they will add up over the course of the 114 miles. Still, it is expected to be a field sprint, and there are 2 very hard left turns, sharper than 90 degrees coming into the final kilometer, and then a couple of traffic circles after that. So it's not a perfectly straightforward finishing sprint.
This was earlier today in the start town of Almaden. Under sunny skies, temperatures a bit cooler than they have been as the riders rolled out in front of huge crowds that have watched this Vuelta all throughout this first week. So the race is underway. Stage 7, over 180K on tap today, headed towards the second weekend of the race, and we'll pick up live coverage when we come back on Universal Sports. And we are now live with just over 77 kilometers left to go on stage 7. This is the field with a gap of 5.5 minutes out to a 4-man breakaway. And you might be able to tell they just went through the feed zone. So a little lunch on the menu right now.
Got to keep those calories flowing every single day, and it's important to even eat much before you're hungry, and it's hard to do when it's hot out like this. You got to force it down.
So a leisurely pace as they take the Musette bags up through the field, hand them out to their teammates, and everybody gets a little nourishment before the hectic activity in the final portion of the stage. Igor Anton, number 51 for Euskaltel. Boy, has it been a disappointing first week for him. One of the top contenders coming in, suffering on the first summit finish, the uphill climb the following day, basically out of podium contention here, and we're not even to the second full weekend yet. Now field rolling along. No categorized climbs on the profile today, but very bumpy in nature. It's not one of these long, flat, typical transition stages that you see at a Grand Tour. There definitely are a lot of rollers out there. Liquigas, a team that took control at the end of yesterday's stage. TTT-like performance at the end there when they caught all the other GC guys off guard. Joaquim Rodriguez, Sylvain Chavanel admitted that, hey, we didn't expect them to attack, and we really weren't paying attention.
Yeah, really caught everybody off guard, and Chavanel even complaining after the stage, saying he didn't want to make a controversial statement, but he thought that the lead group of 5 motor pace behind the camera bike. I didn't really see it that way from our vantage point, because we were getting the images from that camera bike, and it didn't look like it was right on the group.
A very interesting dynamic, the way Nibali was upset with his teammates for not staying in the bonus time. But it's a rare situation to have 4 teammates like that come to the line at the end of that type of stage where it was some kind of a reduced sprint. So because they were going so fast on the descent, they were single file and really didn't have a chance to talk. So they were essentially discussing their tactics in the final 300 meters to the line.
Yeah, really challenging. And I actually called up the team. I spoke with Paolo Barbieri of Liquid Gas Cannondale after the stage, and I said, what happened? He said, you know, the only thing I can say is Agnoli made a mistake. He should have put his brakes on and let Nibali come by and get the 8-second bonus for 3rd, but it all happened so fast, it just didn't work out, and Nibali was very upset afterwards.
And a couple of Cofidis riders, and they have 2 men in the breakaway today. There's a 4-man break of non-threatening general classification riders up the road, as the attacks started very early on today's stage, and they're in the green jersey there for Katusha. That is Joaquim Rodriguez wearing the green jersey of the points competition. Brad Wiggins there on the left-hand side of your screen in the white jersey for Team Sky, still very much in the GC equation.
And today may be the first day in virtually the entire race where we don't see any real chances for general classification changes.
We've seen at least subtle changes each and every day with guys either gaining a little time or losing a little time. Joaquim Rodriguez winning the stage a couple of days ago, so there have been some changes almost every day in the general classification. And now our first look at the breakaway. All 4 of these guys in their first ever Vuelta a Españas. 2 Frenchmen, 2 Spaniards. Luis Angel Mate, the 27-year-old Spaniard for Cofidis. Top man on the GC among the quartet at 14:39 down. Julien Fouchard, Frenchman for Cofidis. 2nd-year pro is in the group. Steve Huonard, also a Frenchman for AG2R. As we move back to Brad Wiggins, who's quietly just plodding along, 1:26 back, and no doubt his sights are set on that stage 10 individual time trial to really make his move on the GC.
Big time. He's looking forward to that. Wiggins crashed out of the Tour de France, really banged up badly there. So he just said, you know what? I have great form. I'm going to refocus. He's actually gotten even lighter. I think he's several kilograms lighter than he's ever been in his racing career. And he really is focused on this one.
Andrew Talansky for Garmin Cervelo is at the front of the peloton now. He's done a lot of work in this first week at the front of the field when Garmin Cervelo has wanted to put men at the front of the field.
Well, they've got a very good opportunity today for their main field sprinter, Tyler Farah. Yesterday, when I spoke with Bingen Fernandez of the team, one of the directors, he said they were riding for Hausler. Today, he said it's all going to be Farah. This is a perfect type of day for the American.
So the field in a comfortable position. They know the break is within comfortable parameters. At 5:13 up the road, no big launching pads for the break to use later, and 62 kilometers still left to go on the stage. And I know, Gogo, you've been known to throw a pot or 2 in your time, so you should be happy.
A lot of Talaverna pottery in my house, Steve, believe it or not.
And it is a very flat finish. But something to keep an eye on is just outside of the final K, there's almost a 180-degree turn for the riders. And then inside the final K, there are 2 roundabouts, but it is entirely flat. It's not like one of these stages we've seen earlier in this first week where there's a little undulation, there's a little uphill. Nothing like that as they come up on the first intermediate sprint point of the day. And this is our 4-man breakaway. First of 2 intermediate sprints. Second one coming up with just about 23K left to go.
Antonio Capello taking that and not contested in any way, shape, or form. As these guys are not interested in those points. They're just interested in trying to stay away as long as possible.
How do you think that finish will help to dictate the sprint? Again, earlier we saw that really steep hill inside the final kilometer of stage number 2 that broke up the field sprint. We've seen uphill finishes and some kind of climbing that's really made things much different for the sprinters. But today, with it being entirely flat, but with some of these subtle turns, how do you think that might impact things?
Well, first of all, I think it's really important to realize that HTC High Road is missing not only Matt Goss, but Mark Cavendish. So that's a team that all these guys are used to seeing line it up and try and take control of the lead out in the final 15 or 10 kilometers. They probably will not be trying to do that, even though they have Dagan Colvin Howard. There's your overall race leader, Sylvain Chavanel. Very pedestrian day for him. He's got to be happy about that. So in the absence of HTC High Road taking control, I think it's going to fall to a battle between Garmin Cervelo and Skill Shimano. Skill Shimano has a lot of guts, and they're going to try and take that one away from Tyler Farah. But we're going to see Leopard Trek in there as well.
Sylvain Chavanel, his 3rd day in the red jersey, 4th different leader at this year's race. And status quo at the front of the field. 31K left to go on stage number 7 at the Vuelta a Espana. 151 now, the gap to the 4 leaders for the field.
Really flying on this little section of downhill here. The field getting it going. You can see that rough pavement when you're back in the middle of the peloton. If you hit a bump in there, you could get a pinch flat, you could wreck a wheel, it could cause a crash. So even a relatively pedestrian-looking day like this, you have to be careful and aware at all times.
See Igor Anton, stage 14 last year's Vuelta, if you want an example.
Yeah, he's crashed at the Vuelta before when he was riding really well. So at any time, you have to be vigilant.
Final 30K, and the lead coming down even more now. Well inside of 2 minutes for the 4-man group of Luis Angel Matze, Julian Fouchard, Steve Huonard, and Antonio Caballo. 4 guys in their first Vueltas, and they've been the primary breakaway on the day. Went clear much earlier in the stage, had a lead of almost 9 minutes at one point, and just what the peloton ordered for today to keep everything nice and easy.
At one point, it looked like they were going to catch him way too soon, and that would reignite the excitement and attacking in the peloton. The peloton then eased up a bit, and the guys have clung out there for a bit. But look at this, a little bit of a split in the peloton.
With 30K left to go for the leaders.
Probably a result of that little bit of crosswind we were seeing as the field was flying down that hill, and it put all the guys in the right gutter of the road, and eventually it snapped.
Andrew Hood mentioned there is a headwind at the finish too, so let's see what that does to the sprinters.
That's a very tricky situation because the sprinters are used to knowing how far from the finish they can jump. If it's 200 meters, if it's 175, and each guy knows what he can do, where he can accelerate to the line. With a headwind, it totally changes that, and they have to somehow figure out how to recalibrate for the headwind.
And you have to do it on the fly when it's happening in the blink of an eye so quickly.
Yeah, and you don't necessarily know how bad the headwind is. Is it 10 miles an hour? Is it 20? And that'll change how long your sprint is. Oh, and there looks like there's a crash there, or maybe, yeah, there is.
Quick Step, Movistar and BMC involved.
That's Dario Cataldo for Quick Step. He's up on his feet.
And a Backlund Soleil rider in the background also dealing with an issue.
As we were saying, you can never let your guard down, because at any moment, something like this can not only take you out of the field, it can actually take you out of the race.
This happened right in the middle of the road.
Pretty hard to know exactly what caused that crash. But guys just get tangled up. Quite often, one rider will just get forced over on another rider, and his front wheel hit the back wheel of another rider, and then you fall down, and there's a cascading effect.
Greg Van Avermaet, so he's their sprinter for BMC. That's not a good situation for them with a likely field sprint coming up.
Yeah, not good at all.
Ruslan Pogordny for Vacan Soleil.
He's a man who spent a lot of time in a break a few days ago. Big engine on that squad.
And this is back to the front of the field. They're motoring right along. Chavanel. And this is the split that's been caused. A couple of different groups on the road now.
Yeah, I see 4 right there in the screen, all very close together. This would be very desperate moments for each of these groups. A little bit of a crosswind out of the left, so notice how they're all slammed over to the gutter on the right. So only the front guys in each group are getting a draft. The other ones, they're in the wind.
And any sprinter that's caught in one of the groups behind the front group is going to have to work that much harder to get back up, and that's some energy that you may not have for that kick at the finish. With the gap to the 4 leaders down inside of a minute and a half.
Look at all the Euskaltel riders on the front of the second group. I count at least 4 of them on the front. So they're pulling the first 2 groups back together. Very, very tricky moment of the bike race. Everybody at any moment could open a gap because of this crosswind and yet let this thing split up again.
And you're also getting to the point inside of the final 30K where the sprinters teams are going to start thinking about when they're going to bring that break back. Probably not yet, but you're getting to the point where it starts to become something that's going through your mind. When do we, in fact, reel them back for good?
This is Egoy Martinez on the back for Euskaltel. But we got a couple other riders in there as well. Machado, one of the main men for Radio Shack, was one of the Radio Shack guys there. And look at Garmin Cervelo really drilling it on the front right now.
And Sky is up there. Brad Wiggins sitting second wheel in the white jersey.
This is turning into a crosswind battle right now, Steve. This will be very tense in the bike race. This may shatter it.
So this has finally ignited something from the field that we haven't seen all day long. Over 70K an hour.
There is nothing that is as brutally physical as crosswind battles. There's just a little bit of a crosswind battle, but they're trying to see if they can crack it. And it's starting to snap behind already.
Guys losing contact. And single file behind with several different groups now. Coming unglued from the main field that just a short while ago was all together. It's Jose Vicente Toribio for Andalucia. Behind him, De Volder for Vacan Soleil, one of the groups that's been caught out.
And Boucher is back there as well with Machado. So 2 of the 3 leaders for Radio Shack in this group that has been split out the back. This is a really big crosswind battle, but this left turn, that's going to be the saving grace for these guys chasing. It'll turn it into a headwind.
Another curve up the road as the gap to our 4 leaders is down close to a minute now. Helicopter getting blown around, so a lot of wind, and you can see just how exposed it is out there on these wide open highways.
This was the worry that a lot of guys had. Heinrich Hausler, a Garmin Cervelo rider, saying if it was windy today would be brutal.
Under a minute to the 4 leaders. First time the gap has been this low. Quick Step and Garmin Cervelo, the 2 teams most prominent at the front of the field all day long. Brad Wiggins, third wheel right now.
Guys still looking back, wondering if there's enough of a crosswind to make it worth the effort to really drill it. But Wiggins still being very attentive, staying close to the front. You do not want to miss a split on a day like this.
Andrew Talansky for Garmin Cervelo is at the front. Kevin Sealdrer is there second for Quick Step. Then Wiggins, a rider from Leopard Trek, just coming in front of Wiggins. This is the front of a split-up field.
Riders out the back here, and there are more than a few of them. group like this, they need to get very organized. They need to use the whole road so that they can all get a draft. Kim Ligthart, the Vacances Soleil rider in the special jersey. There's Michael Albacini there for HTC High Road.
These guys,
it's over for these
not
guys.
really riding that hard, so maybe conceding the fact that they're not going to catch back on.
Yeah, quite often when you get a split on a day like this, once that gap opens up, there's nothing anybody can do about it.
I see Joaquim Rodriguez up there. He's in the green jersey near the top of the screen.
That is Chavanel there in the red jersey, just about 3 or 4 wheels back, right in the middle. So he has kept himself out of trouble.
And our 4 leaders.
Well, the gap's going to come down quickly when the field is doing battle in a crosswind section like that.
And this is the second intermediate sprint. It'll be Steve Huenar who will leave him through, the AG2R rider. Well, the break is held together. 4 riders who established this move earlier in the stage. All 4 still riding together here, with now 23 kilometers left to go to the finish.
Look at this. The field has actually eased up a little bit. So this gives guys behind a chance to catch.
Let's see as the clock counts what the actual deficit will be to the 4 leaders. It was down under a minute with the pace so high from the front of the peloton a moment ago, but as they've maybe eased up a bit, we'll see if it's gone back out over a minute. Nope. That's going to still be under a minute here as they come through.
Just about 50 seconds from the peloton to the 4 leaders. But this actually brings a big chance for guys like Matthew Boucher and Thiago Machado to get back up into that group. Machado missing that split, big problem for that team. Radio Shack.
So the 4 riders in the break now probably hearing the footsteps.
Yeah, if they turn around right now, they're going to see the group right behind them on this little bit of an uphill with only a 28-second advantage. That's very close.
Now, bumpy terrain today, but flat enough that it doesn't appear like it's going to allow this breakaway to stay clear or disrupt the sprinters who are very focused on getting an opportunity to battle for the stage win.
That's another group just making contact with the back of the peloton, Steve. So yet another large group of riders making it back on after the fierce but very short crosswind battle. Really, to me, the challenge for Garmin Cervelo is not to commit too many resources too early. They've had a little bit of a tendency to do that in the races and then not get Tyler all the way to the finish with enough guys left.
Oh, and here's a move by one of the Cofidis riders on a little bit of a climb. So our first significant movement from the breakaway, and that is Luis Angel Mate.
Mate, first year on the Cofidis team. He came over from the Italian Androni Giacottoli squad last year. In his first Vuelta, he's decided it's time to go all in. Maybe he can get the most aggressive for the day.
Now you get to the point where you sense you're about to be caught, so you have to take matters into your own hands and launch the solo move. And Mate, who is the highest placed rider among the 4 in the breakaway on the general classification at 14:39 down, he's now out on the attack with just over 17K left.
And if you look at him tomorrow, you will probably see his number 43, instead of having a white background, will have a red background, because typically this move out of the break will get the rider the most aggressive prize for the day, and that's the red number.
And this is the action behind, with the peloton chasing. And those are the 3 riders there on the right-hand side of the screen that Mate has left behind.
He hasn't gotten very far, has he? Angling off the front of them. But Mate has Fauchard there sitting on the other two riders.
And here's the field. So we're coming up on that point where right around 15K, you start to really sense that the break is about to be caught, or that the sprinters teams are really coming forward to try and bring everybody back together. Usually that 15K mark, give or take, is about when they really hit the accelerator and start to get serious about the stage.
And just noticing on the front, there was a sea of orange jerseys. Well, Igor Anton was one of the men who missed the split in the crosswind, so maybe they're not taking any risk at this point and getting him up to the front and out of trouble. And we may get another big crosswind battle here when they turn around this corner.
You can see how open it is as they head north today through the central range of Spain, finishing just southwest of Madrid. And more attacks coming from the breakaway.
Mate has been caught, so of course his teammate Fauchard, who's been sitting on, immediately goes on the attack. But this time, Honard, the Frenchman, is going to chase after him right away.
More of a response this time from the other three.
Cabello in a little bit of a trouble on the back there.
And not too far behind. $15K banner.
9.3 miles to the finish line on this 114-mile day.
Julien Fauchard, second-year pro, first Vuelta, 25-year-old Frenchman for Cofidis, and Cofidis riders just taking turns attacking. Mate went first, Fauchard now following.
It's textbook the way you ride a breakaway when you have numbers like the Cofidis team does. One guy goes, it means his teammate gets to sit on the chasers, and then if they catch him, you got a fresh man to launch his own attack.
And the other three now just sitting up.
Yeah, they're completely giving it up.
So they'll be caught momentarily by the field.
And they're in for a rude awakening back in the peloton because of being off the front all day with four guys. It's very mellow out there. Yeah, you're working hard, but you don't have to fight and bump handlebars and bump shoulders. Back in the field, it is a really nasty time right now setting up for the sprint.
Sylvain Chavanel in the red jersey has come to the front with his quick-step teammates. Rabobank has also moved up. Is Oscar Freire feeling better? Can he give it a go today? Now the AG2R rider, Steve Wuinard, is scooped up there. So the breakaway being gobbled up here. Julien Fauchard, all that's left of the four-man breakaway, and hanging out front by just 15 seconds.
You can see he's 1 hour, 1 minute, 4 seconds down in the general classification. This is not about his general classification hopes whatsoever. This is purely vying for a stage win would be the big prize, or the most aggressive, but certainly he's already been off the front all day, flying the flag for his team, Cofidis.
And now the rest of the breakaway picked up on the road with Rabobank at the front. Oscar Freire, after feeling ill in the first week, feeling better today, hoping to have a chance to battle it out for the sprint. He knows, like the other top sprinters, that there are not many genuine opportunities to really have a true sprint at this year's Vuelta, so you don't want to miss out.
Now, Freire is an interesting character. He's one of the best sprinters in the business when he's going well, but he's very hit and miss. He often doesn't go well, and his competitors never know when he's going to have one of those days where he can be a world beater.
12-second lead with 12K remaining for Julien Fauchard. Fauchard with the 10K banner in sight, but just a lead of a few seconds right now. And there it is. So just about to get him.
It's been a valiant effort, but it's not going to work.
10K left to go. It's all about to come back together, and we'll come back with the finish of stage number 7 in just a moment. We come back just in time for Julien Fouchard to be swallowed up by the field. So the breakaway has totally disintegrated, and this is the front of the race.
Keep an eye on that red jersey of Fouchard. He's already lost about 50 places on the left side of the field, just going back like a stone.
4 hours, 40 minutes in to a 182-kilometer stage number 7, and now the final 7 kilometers with the field all together. The headwind at the finish on the run-in to the line itself. 3 kilometers. Here we are 7 days in, and it seems like just about to get our first field sprint of this year's Vuelta a Espana. Hard to believe, but it's been such an active, eventful, and surprising first 6 days. But it's all coming together here with 3K left and a speed of 65 kilometers per hour.
A lot of teams think they have a shot at this with their collective sprinters. So everybody trying to wrestle control of the front of the group here.
Roundabout coming.
They got a couple of really hard left turns coming up just over 1K from the finish, and then 2 more roundabouts in that final kilometer.
I think it's going to be that acceleration coming out of the big left-hander just before they see the red kite for 1K to go that could really determine who makes it into a front group and who misses out, especially because they're turning into a headwind at that point.
And that headwind makes it much slower speed, so a guy has to wait longer to sprint. Basically, you want to time your sprint so that when you jump, you accelerate all the way to the line. So if someone's on your wheel, when they try and come around you, they have to accelerate more than you're accelerating.
Pace is very high at the front. HTC High Road coming to the head of the peloton for the first time today. 1.5 kilometers left to go. Big, sharp left-hand turn coming up.
Yeah, 2 really tight ones. The first one's about 90. The second one is slightly more than 90, actually slightly less than 90, but you put them together and it's just one big arcing left turn that turns into almost a 180.
Setting up for it now. Like everybody makes it through cleanly, and then there's the red kite, meaning 1 kilometer left to go in the stage. Skill Shimano was bringing riders to the front, along with HTC and Garmin Cervelo. Quick Step now, it looks like, has brought some boys to help out, but it's still a mixture of teams riding near the front at 54 kilometers per hour.
It's almost 40 miles an hour as they're really getting ramped up here inside the final kilometer. No team has full control, Steve.
No team has it organized, has control. Riders trying to freelance off wheels. Now they're coming in towards the finish.
That's Murillo Fischer, who's gotten clear for Garmin Cervelo.
Murillo Fischer out front. Tyler Ferris sitting about 6 or 7 wheels back. Skill Shimano has their man Marcel Kittel poised as well. The lead out is underway. Vaca Soleil has a rider launching. Now Skill Shimano, 3 riders lined up. Daniela Bonani coming away for Leopard Trek as well. Now they hit the gas in the final few meters and coming up to the line. Peter Sagan. Oh, a crash involving Tyler Ferris. Several guys go down. Here comes Peter Sagan, but it looks like it's going to be Marcel Kittel for Skill Shimano, who ekes out the win just ahead of Sagan.
Oh, nasty, nasty crash. It definitely looked like Farah hit very hard. Kittel gets the win. Sagan going second after winning yesterday. Oh, brutal.
Michele Scarpone is also down.
All these guys will get the same time as the winner because they're inside the final 3 kilometers.
See how it happened.
Crash was about 10 wheels back. It wasn't even, it was 4 wheels back, and I didn't see who that was from the high shot from the helicopter.
Looked like Farah went down first.
Or was it the Facon-Soleil rider? Well, we'll have to digest that. But Kittel got a clean shot at the line. And Sagan right up next to him. Oscar Freire was in there as well on the left in fourth. And it looks like Daniela Bonatti obscured in third.
Tyler Ferris still laying there on his back. 197 is Andrew Talansky, who's right next to him. And Heinrich Hausler, 193. There's Michele Scarpone, who went down in the crash. The red jersey was caught up in the crash. Sylvain Chavanel, he didn't go down. He just kind of had to get off his bike to avoid it. Boy, oh boy.
Scarpone. Just like dominoes. That's just how dangerous it is when you're in full flight in a field sprint. If somebody crashes, always brings down a bunch of them.
So Sagan, the winner yesterday, gets second today.
Looks like Freire was third.
Well, we talked about the fact that no team really had it organized, and you didn't have that true lead out, so you had riders from different teams kind of freelancing, grabbing wheels. And the crash occurring right there near the finish. Unbelievable.
Well, Marcel Kittel in his first Grand Tour, already with 12 wins this season, makes it number 13.
As they set it up, wide, flat run-in. Oh, Tyler Ferrer goes down first there, right in the middle. And then other guys behind them, because they were riding so fast, just couldn't avoid him.
It's just craziness. It looks like someone took out Tyler's front wheel, and then dominoes after that. Many guys hitting the deck, and then everybody behind getting stopped.
Ferrer there laying on his back.
With his teammate Murillo Fischer there, just looking after him as all their teammates will do.
Now, Ferris certainly one of the guys who got the worst of it. Among the GC riders, we saw Michele Scarpone go down.
Of a Grand Tour, 13 wins of the year, he's on fire.
23-year-old. And they have confidence in him. They were riding for him earlier in the stage, and earlier this week, when there were some other possible sprint opportunities, Skill Shimano was at the front, so they have not been shy about their intentions to get this guy in position for a sprint win. And today on stage number 7, he delivered.